try to get YouTube going too, you guys. Let's see what else. Live streaming. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to stream live to YouTube today because I didn't do the settings correctly somehow. Anyway, I'm hoping I'm going to be here on Facebook. And the show's about to start. Let me get over to my page and see if it's working. Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to be okay. Okay. Show is going to start in about a minute. So I guess I connected you guys too soon. Hello. The other thing is, I tried to get a handy dandy cord. Proof, I tried. Right here. That was going to give you the audio from Blog Talk, and it isn't working. It's giving all kinds of delay and feedback, so I'm not going to give that to you today. Sorry. So I'm going to try to figure out how to do that. I'm going to talk to Yaron, who I'm still blaming for all this, and try to get it fixed next time. Yeah, so I'm looking now at my Blog Talk screen, and I don't know if anybody's going to be watching me live on Blog Talk. I think they're all going to come over here to Facebook. Yeah, here, Jean says she can hear me. Excellent. So we'll see. I don't know. Some people probably still are only going to be at Blog Talk because they can't get on live video or something. We'll see. See what happens. That's an odd shot. Okay. So you're not going to hear Blog Talk. I'm sorry, guys. Show's starting now. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the January 10th, 2018 edition of Don't Let It Go Unheard. And here we discuss news, politics, and culture from an individualist perspective. I'm your host, Amy Peikoff, feeling rather self-conscious doing a show first time on live stream. And I just got a weird message in my ear, which I don't need at this particular moment in time. Are you guys still watching me over there on Facebook? I got this strange thing as if I got disconnected or something. Blog Talk, people over at the Blog Talk chat room, can you hear me? Can you let me know that you can hear me? Am I still connected? Waiting for that. There's probably a delay in each of these technologies that I'm dealing with. Connection can't be established. Okay, I don't know what they're doing. Let me see. Try this. Sorry, you guys, technical difficulties first time in. And it says I'm connected, but is it not? No audio. Yeah, no audio, they're saying. Okay, how am I going to get that done? Because it's not letting me do it. Oh, this is crazy. Okay, so Blog Talk is not working. It was connected, everything was going well, and then suddenly it just disconnected for no apparent reason. I've got internet connection working and everything else. Okay, I'm going to have to end the episode over at Blog Talk and start a new one. Everyone be patient with me. I'm going to do this really quick. To delete the episode. There's a million things that you have to do when you get disconnected from Blog Talk. Okay, create an episode. Let's see now. Let's see. to delete your old episode that wasn't anything and then start all over again. So you get to see what's called sausage, because this is all the inner technical glitches of trying to do a show. Okay, I'm going to go into creating an episode, broadcast, go live now. So I'm going to try, for those of you who are on Blog Talk, to get on again. I have to put a title and everything in again, so bear with me. Short pitch, let me go grab it off my blog. Sorry guys, all of this is required. Do this. I'm doing the minimum. Okay, I don't have to have all of that. And I think I can just go live now. So let me go live. And I've got the mic on for Blog Talk. It says it's creating. And there we go. I'm in the studio, direct connect. Let's see if I can do this, guys. I'm hearing it in my ears. Let's see. This is what I wanted the first time I do live stream of my podcast, to have a disconnect from Blog Talk. Okay, it says I'm scheduled to start in 27 seconds. So in 27 seconds, you should be able to hear me over at Blog Talk. Let's see what happens. I think they're going to give me music. Oh, they're not going to give me any music because I didn't set up any music. Okay, everyone, over at Blog Talk, you should be able to hear me now. But there's only, as far as I know, one guest listening live over at Blog Talk. Everyone, this is Don't Let It Go Unheard. This is the January 10th edition of Don't Let It Go Unheard. This is the second time I started it, which is why you're not hearing any intro music. I had to just throw together a second show. So those of you who are listening on podcast and you're wondering where the beautiful intro music is, that's where it went. So I think we're all okay. We've got Blog Talk connected. We've got live stream over at Facebook connected, which is, I think, the glitch that made it disconnect. And we're going to start over again. If you run over to my blog at don'tletitgo.com, you can see the title for today's show, Running with Scissors, because I figure if I'm going to do my first live stream, I might as well do a really challenging show in addition to handling all this new technology. Yeah, I think everything over at Blog Talk is fine. So anyone who's over there at Blog Talk, if you feel like chiming in and letting me know that you get audio over there, that would be great to let me know. Excellent. Okay. So hello, everybody over at the Facebook. People say there they can hear me at least. How's the sound over at Facebook? Is it pretty decent? I'm using the iPhone microphone like I was doing at the test show the other day because it seemed to be the best way to do it. I'm still not giving up on trying to connect the Blog Talk audio so that if people call me through Blog Talk, which I'm going to invite them to do in a second, that you'll be able to... oh, someone said that they did have audio on Blog Talk. That's interesting. You should have audio now on Blog Talk. You should have audio fine on Blog Talk because I went ahead and reconnected everything. So the audio here is not as good as on Blog Talk. That makes sense. And what I'm hoping to do is feed the Blog Talk audio into the feed. But anyway, let me stop talking technology and start actually getting into this show. If you go to the blog at don'tletitgo.com, you'll see the title of today's show, Running with Scissors. And if you took a look at the program notes, which I always try to put there at least an hour in advance, today I put it 2 hours in advance because I had all these extra things I wanted to do to prepare for the show. You can get a sense of what it is that I'm going to be talking about, but it'll become clearer as we go on. Most of the things in the program notes I'm going to tie into this theme. At the beginning, though, of the program notes, you'll see I've got a link for those of you who like Patreon who like to support creators on Patreon. I finally created a Patreon page. I'm going to make an intro video sometime in the next couple days, and I'll put an intro video up as well. But I already have categories, which I'm kind of proud of. I think it was really fun the way that I did the categories there. So if you like Patreon, if that's a way that you would like to support creators like me, go ahead and run over there and check out my page. I put a link to my YouTube channel. I was hoping to live stream to YouTube today, but I didn't navigate the Mevo live streaming settings correct. And so I think what I need to do next time is I need to set up the YouTube one first before the Facebook one, because this time I figured, oh, I can start Facebook and then I can start YouTube. And once I started Facebook, it didn't allow me to start the YouTube stream. So I'm going to have to get on, schedule the YouTube stream, and then I guess start the Facebook just before. This is all a learning process. So sorry to those of you who prefer YouTube. I'm going to have to post that video after the show's over. So those are the first two links. And then the third is a blog post, which was the inspiration for the title of today's show. And it's by my friend Benjamin. So the disclaimer is that if I get something wrong about the theory, don't blame it on him, blame it on me, because this is me. I'm going to say running with scissors with the theory, but I don't think I'm running with scissors with the theory, but I'm, taking what I'm taking from the theory and applying it to things that I see out in the world, things that are important to me, making connections about it. I found it a really insightful theory to use as a tool, an extra tool to look at the world. It's a really cool metaphor. The metaphor is this metaphor of the scissors, which I'll explain, and its connection to something that he calls the pendulum. And so we'll talk about that. We're going to get into that blog post. Let me go over to my page. People are saying, yeah, the sound is better over at Blog Talk, sound is good, etc. I will try to improve all the technical aspects of this live stream as we go on, but I wanted to make this available. People were asking for a live stream, so I went ahead and decided I could try and do it as well. Okay, so should we get started? Who do I have over here at the Blog Talk? There's hardly anyone in the Blog Talk chat room, and this is the thing. So if you want to call in and talk to me, if you want to put in questions, of course you can put questions in the Facebook comment section, because I'm trying to monitor that as well as the Blog Talk Radio chat room. The Blog Talk Radio chat room is a good place to put your questions, but if you'd like to call, the number to do so is 760-888-5817, 760-888-5817. What I'll try to do for people who are watching the live stream, because you're not going to be able to hear what I'm hearing in my ears, is I'll try to do, a little recap of any questions or comments before I give my own comment or answer to what a caller says. I'll do that at least for today. I am hoping to figure out the technical difficulties of it. The show says 7 minutes remaining. Oh no. Jean says the show at Blog Talk says 7 minutes remaining. And do you want to know why that is? Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to start over entirely again, because when I started over, what Blog Talk does is it puts you in a default of a 15-minute show, which is ridiculous. So what this means is I'm going to have to start entirely all over again at Blog Talk. You guys, I am so sorry. So I'm going to end episode, start over again. I think the chat room just stays where it is. So stay where you are. Don't go away. On Blog Talk, I'm going to be right back. Let me end this episode, start over again. It's so funny. It's so funny. So I have to delete the old one again. Go through all. Okay. You know what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to tell people that I don't want to start the entire thing all over again. So go live now. Duration, we'll say another hour at least. And I'll tell people to go over and check it out. I'll put 90 minutes. Why not? I'll tell people to go watch my live stream if they want the initial context for this. Maybe not. Let's see. Okay, running the scissors again. And that, luckily I still had it in my cut and paste, the little blurb that I am required to give before I can start with you all. I don't have to put tags or any of that stuff. I can just go live. Very nice. I hope I did it right this time. So sorry. Okay, now it says I'm going to start in how long? Oh, they usually give you, I guess, a minute. And now Direct Connect is not doing it for me. Oh, here we go. Here it goes. Okay, just about 15 seconds or so, and then I'm going to be on Blog Talk again for the third time. Okay, hello everyone. This is Don't Let It Go Unheard, the January 10th, 2018 edition, and this is my third attempt at starting the show today. First time, Blog Talk's fault, they disconnected me. Second time, my fault. When I put a new show up, I scheduled it for only 15 minutes. Third time's a charm. Here we are. Show title today is Running with Scissors, and as I was explaining before, Jean in the chat room was so kind to let me know that I had scheduled a short show. What I was explaining is that today's show is inspired by a blog post by my friend Benjamin, and I was giving the disclaimer that insofar as I get any of his theory wrong, it's my fault, it's not his fault. This is me sort of running with this theory that I found rather insightful and helpful. It's a good way to look at the world. I'm making connections to some of the things that I remember watching. Some of these are in the program notes. A book that I've been reading from Mark Manson. I've got a lot of things to connect, of course, Trump, to this theory. And hopefully you'll enjoy my take on the theory, but don't blame Benjamin, blame me if I get something wrong about this. I've got in the program notes at don'tletitgo.com a link not only to that blog post, but a couple other things that I'd like you to check out. One is my Patreon page, which I finally set up, and I'll have an intro video in a couple days. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is not live streaming yet, but I think I'm going to get the technology right so that by next week I will be live streaming also through YouTube for those people who prefer the YouTube live stream. So I think now I've got all the technology right. People in the chat room over at Blog Talk Radio, can you tell me that you hear me? I see a number of guests, and guests don't often like to chime in the chat room, but selfishness, can you hear me over there in the chat room at Blog Talk Radio? How are we doing? And then on Facebook, you can get me. Okay, William says he's got audio on Blog Talk. It sounds really good. The audio over there is superior. There's no doubt about that. And then the question is, am I going to be able to stream that into the phone? Mevo has this feature that says that you can plug in and, feed the audio into Mevo. But when I tried doing it, I was doing a little test before the show, and it was a ton of delay and feedback. It was really horrible. So I don't see that I can do that yet. So I'm not going to run with that. Benjamin saying, don't blame Amy, blame me. Not at all. And this is all part of it, right? Which is that if there are things out there available to you in the world because of this wonderful thing called the internet, things like blog posts from friends of yours, that it's not the post's fault that a person runs off and does something that's wrong about it. So it's my responsibility, is it not, to digest the theory and decide whether I think it's good or not and apply it and be responsible for the results. So as I said, especially if I misinterpret the theory, don't blame him, blame me. Don'tLetItGo.com, program notes, that's where you can find all the good stuff for today. And I'm going to go ahead and dive in. The blog post is called Chatter of Freedom, and you can take from it, I would say, a couple overall messages. But like I said, I'm going to run with this metaphor of the scissors that he brings up. Chatter of Freedom, the title itself is, talking about this idea that with freedom, there comes a whole lot of messy stuff that might make you uncomfortable. And that is not a bad thing. And then the question is, why are people either uncomfortable with it? I mean, of course people are always going to be sort of uncomfortable with things that are not familiar with them, but why do they automatically think that something should be done about it? I mean, that's really one of the things. And then of course, what is the thing that they think should be done about it? And that's where this idea of the pendulum that he talks about comes in. But um, yeah, so the chatter of freedom. There is this chatter of freedom out there. There's a lot of ideas that you're being exposed to. You might get offended. Your feelings might get hurt. All over campus, college campuses in our country, everyone needs psychotherapy because they've been exposed to ideas with which they disagree. And this is the sort of thing that is going on everywhere. And it's a theme in this blog post. It's also a theme in Mark Manson's book, and I'm going to bring that up later. But let's go through a little bit in the post. He talks about the fact that in politics, what we've been doing far too often is we're voting for the least worst alternative. And so many people were voting for Trump because they thought that that would be better than Hillary. I was glad to say that I wasn't one of the people, although in my mind I thought maybe things will be slightly better under Trump than they would be under Hillary Clinton. And that might still end up being the case. But, people are always voting for, or, voting against the worst thing. And the question is there really a disaster looming around the corner all the time? Why might you think, relatively speaking, that there's a disaster looming around the corner all the time? And what happens as a consequence of you believing that there's this disaster looming? What are you susceptible to? What sort of manipulation are you susceptible to? And the kind of manipulation that he talks about that we're susceptible to is we are susceptible to the political parties, the left and the right, the worst of the left and the right, getting us to vote for them on the basis of scaring us as to the horrible outcome that's going to happen if you vote for the other party. Of course, both the left in the sense of communism and the right in the sense of fascism, they present themselves as the only moral alternative to what is the only true stable equilibrium, the only true moral system in the world, which is capitalism. But both, you've got the fascists and the communists are saying, no, you can't have all of this freedom because either you're not doing your moral duty or all of these horrible things are going to happen, or both. And so we seem to be swinging back all the time between two different types of totalitarianism. And it is this scissors metaphor that Benjamin brings in towards the end that he uses to explain why we are in this perpetual kind of swinging back and forth from one extreme of the pendulum to the other. And, in terms of history, it's the communists and the fascists in the 20th century that we can look at for that. Now, what is this idea of the scissors? And I've got a kind of a printout of this. It's page 4 or so of where he brings this in. And he says, not all transformations in society keep the same pace. And he says he's not getting into an argument, not now, about which leads the way, ideology in terms of what we believe is right, or experience. He says, but nonetheless, our lives, public and private, are full of examples where we demand that the one falls in line with the other. The idea is, what do we expect with respect to a differential that we perceive between what is out in the world and what we believe is right? Between the is and the ought, the way things are and the way things ought to be. What is our reaction when we see a differential between these two? And the scissors is this idea that we expect everything that we see out in the world to automatically fall into line, immediately, quietly, quickly, fall into place with what we think the ideal should be. That's this idea of the scissors. And I was going to say, as a side note, he says he's not going to get into an argument about what leads the way, ideology or experience. And I say, well, that's good, because that's a debate over beer or something. But um, the one thing I'll say for now is, which leads, if you ask the question, which leads the way, ideology or experience, I'll say yes. And then we could talk about that. Um, but then he goes into, in terms of really kind of fleshing out this idea of the scissors, a concept called low frustration tolerance, and it's discussed in the Manson book, so I'm going to bring that up later. It's just a lot of good connections with this, with this insight of Benjamin's, which it's been so much fun thinking about it. Benjamin talks about the fact that technology has made our lives so much easier. And in a way, though, this has caused problems for us. He says that we have this tendency to basically think that everything should be easier in our lives, in the same exact way that technology has made our lives easier. And he says he feels that the invention that sums this up the best, the tendency that we have to not have, the tendency towards a low frustration tolerance, that tendency that we have could be summed up in terms of technology in the remote control. The invention of the remote control sums this up best. And with a remote control, what can you do? He says we can manipulate our immediate environment and our experience with the slightest push of our finger. And he says what he is, is sure that this does, other questions about whether it makes us feel divine, etc. He says what it's sure that this does is to habituate us to a relationship of instantaneous control over the conditions formerly governing our lives. And he says it may be so sweet an experience as to terrify us when we find ourselves deprived. So we experience in this realm of technology, I mean, here I am, right? I'm making mistakes, putting this show together and everything in the technology. And it took me about 2 minutes to restart a whole new live broadcast that's going out over Blog Talk Radio. It's not instantaneous. You wish it was a push of one button that could just fix all of it, but it was so fast, right? And we're used to this level of control over different aspects of our lives thanks to technology. In this one realm, there are so many ways that most of the time we can make things happen, just like that. And it spoils us. It makes us think that in every aspect of our lives, we should be able to solve problems, get things done just like that. And when we can't, then that frustration that we experience, maybe we experience fear, depending on what it is that we're trying to solve, that makes us susceptible to manipulation. That's, as I understand it, this is how I'm understanding it. Again, don't blame Benjamin, blame me. So when I read this and I was thinking about this, before we even get into politics or anything else, I was reminded of this great, there was a talk show appearance by Louis C.K., the comedian, and I dropped the YouTube video into the program notes so you can check out his, little appearance. I forget which late night show. It's Conan O'Brien, I believe, that he was on with. And the title of it, everyone's probably familiar with it, Everything is Amazing and Nobody is Happy. And he's talking about, in a way, wouldn't it be good if we just went back to pre-capitalism? And I think it was like, there's a donkey with pots strapped on the side or something, everything's really primitive. And why is it? He says, because people don't appreciate it. And one of the things he says, and I disagree with, because he says, something like we're the worst generation ever because we don't appreciate all of this stuff. And to me, that comment about, we're the worst generation ever, it smacks of what you hear a lot of people talk about, that in history, every generation says that the kids today are terrible and the world's going to go to hell. Every generation. So you could read, stuff from the 19th century and all the people are talking about, the kids today and the world's going to go to hell. And I think he's doing the same thing. So take that part with a grain of salt. But what is right is that everybody's got sort of this scissors thing where they get a taste of something amazing and then they immediately expect everything to sort of fall in line and give them that amazingness all the time without any problems. It's just supposed to have no challenges and not work at all. So I think it's supposed to work all the time, perfectly all the time. I think you should watch his video if you've never watched it before. But I just got to point out one thing, just one quote from it. He's talking about being on an airplane and how you've got internet access, high speed internet access on an airplane. He says, he's got his laptop open and he's watching YouTube videos on an airplane. You're thousands of feet or whatever up in the sky and you're on the internet and you're communicating, you're watching videos, and it's beautiful. And then on the flight that he was on, they lost internet connection for some reason. It stopped working. And the guy next to him said, "Oh, this is bull," And he said, how is it? He says, how quickly the world owes him something, this guy next to him, that he knew existed only 10 seconds ago. That once this wonderful technology is given to you, suddenly your standard for what you expect is way up here. And people just don't have this sense of human fallibility, of the fact that, this is new, that the technology is going to get better all the time. I mean, here I was kind of frustrated that Blog Talk kicked me off, but it's going to happen, right? This is an amazing technology that I can sit in this office and, don't even have to go very far, and I can sit down and broadcast live out to the world. The whole world can watch this on Facebook and everything else. It's amazing. So yeah, there are going to be glitches sometimes, and then I have to restart the show, and it's a little bit of a hassle, but we have to kind of keep in mind what it is that we actually have. If you have something amazing and you get that taste of something amazing, then you have to be patient as to how to increase the amount of that amazingness in your life. And you have to have patience for the reality of the process, which is that it takes work and effort to bring amazing things into your life, which is one of the reasons that I put Matt Bayless's marathon song in the program notes toward the end. So people have to think about that. So the Louis C.K., awesome, check that out. I'm going to talk a little bit later about the Mark Manson book and some ideas that he has in one of his chapters that ties into this as well. But let me go ahead. I might as well just start alienating some people now, because I'm going to talk about Trump and how does Trump tie into the scissors. Let me talk about that. But before I do that, let me go over and see how the comments and everything are doing over at Blog Talk. Isn't the world going to hell? Asks William. In general, and this is one of the things that Benjamin talks about in his post, if you look at all the data about our lives, no, the world is not really going to hell. Now, you could say that politics is going in a hellish direction right now, but I've talked about this on the show now. See, I've got no numbers on my pages, so I have to look and see where. Oh yeah, here it is, about the state of the world. I've talked about this on the show, right? So the life for human beings on this planet is generally getting better all the time, and there are books that you can read about this, and I can't cite the exact titles now, and I don't need to. I'll do it for you at another time. But life expectancy is getting longer, and as Benjamin writes in the post, people living in poverty, there's fewer of them every year. Brilliant doctors are managing to cure or give effective treatments for, my addition, more and more diseases. We've got due process so that now, and I assume he's talking about Brexit, you have this big thing called Brexit. And if you wanted to, exit from the European Union in the past, what would you do? You'd have a war about it or something. And now you just have all these discussions about what the details are going to be. We have due process. We have civilized discussion now. There are a lot of advances in delivery of food so that we can deliver nutritious meals to more and more of the world than we ever have before, et cetera, et cetera. safer, despite what you see on the evening news, you are statistically safer now than any time in the past. And of course, we have the internet and all this wonderfulness where I'm talking to you live in a couple different mediums at the same time. So, no, the world is not going to hell. Life for human beings is getting better. Politics is going to hell. I would say politics is kind of going to hell right now, and I've got examples to complain about with Trump today. There's other places in the world where they are also electing people who are more on what we might call the nationalist right axis. So, yeah, politics are. But the other thing that I focus on, that I try to focus on, is what I call the acceleration in politics. So I would say even in politics, the acceleration is going a little bit in the opposite direction away from that destination of hell. And it's thanks to the increasing influence of some of the right ideas. I think Rand's ideas are being increasingly accepted around the world due to the work, yes, of Ayn Rand Institute, of Yaron Brook in particular, I think is doing a great job at spreading the ideas on a larger scale than I am. Alex Epstein has done a lot with his writing, and his book has gotten a lot of play. There are good ideas having better influence. There's people who are just picking up Ayn Rand's books and reading them. Better politicians out there. I think Ted Cruz is still, better than your average politician. And as I've talked about in the past, what's the difference that makes the difference? I think the influence of Rand. He's not an objectivist. He's still a religious conservative. He's still going to disappoint me. I'm still going to complain about him, but he's better. And so, yeah, the world is not going to hell. Life for human beings is still each year getting better. Technology is putting more things, more potential values at our fingertips, and on all the other axes too, safety and medical and everything else. The danger is that politics are going to keep going in the bad direction and completely, kind of reverse that trend, that we can't continue to make life better and better if we don't have enough freedom with which to do it. That's really the danger. And so what are we trying to do? We are trying to increase the acceleration toward the acceptance of the right ideas, but there is no substitute for that. There's no substitute for that, as today's story of Trump is going to tell us. So I'm looking at my notes, but really what I want is my program notes. Let me click over there. Okay, so what was Trump's frustration today? Because Trump has this idea of how the universe should snap into place with his ideals. He thinks, look, there is this arguably illegal, unconstitutional executive order that Obama issued about immigration, and it's got this DACA program and everything else. Whatever Obama did to create DACA is either illegal or unconstitutional or both, according to Trump. And so what does he expect? He expects that he can, by executive order, just get rid of that thing, and that if people challenge his executive order in court, that the courts are just going to automatically snap into place and say, oh yeah, Trump, you're right, we agree with you, everything is awesome. And it didn't happen. So New York Times headline today is, Trump must keep DACA protections for now, the judge has said. And frankly, you guys, because I was running around preparing for this, I haven't actually looked at this, but when they say he has to keep it for now, I'm guessing this is an interim order, an injunction of some kind, right? Because it's not some sort of final ruling, it's just an interim injunction. Is that true? It says, in the middle of intense political fight about the program that shields from deportation young immigrants who are brought illegally to the United States as children, a federal judge issued a nationwide injunction, late Tuesday, ordering the Trump administration to start the program back up again. As far as I understand, this would not be a final order. So that's one first thing to think about, okay? Because if you're really at a preliminary injunction stage, the standards of review are quite different. Is the decision to kill it improper? Is it a it says all he has to do is he has to maintain the DACA program on a nationwide basis as the legal challenge to the decision goes forward. So this is an interim order. And the other time that I saw people kind of running, I was going to say run with scissors again, but there's just so many places where I see this happening. Let me explain to you what I mean running with scissors, because I'm just going to keep having these connections in my mind and you're not going to know what in the world I'm talking about. So, you have this difference that you perceive between what you think should happen and the way that the world is. And you're not happy with it. Certainly, you think it, boy, it should all be here. And there's all kinds of these emotions that you experience, and you haven't really thought about when it's realistic or if it's ever realistic to expect those things to connect. And you don't analyze, you don't think about it, you don't figure out what your position should be. You just sort of run with this frustration that you experience. That's why I call it running with scissors. So you just kind of run and, go act in the world and start writing blog posts and whatever. Like I said, not this blog, this is a good blog post. But there are people who are writing blog posts about another case that I'll mention in a second, where they're doing it on the basis of an injunction ruling. The ruling at the injunction stage, this preliminary injunction stage, it's only, sort of to hold the status quo, to make sure that no irreparable harm is done while the legal challenge goes forward. These legal challenges take years to work out sometimes. So imagine that you go ahead and you let Trump's order take effect and you deport all of these productive, peaceful people. Suppose you do that. And then the legal challenge goes forward and it goes through the courts and it takes years and oh my God, we're all bored. And then finally the ruling happens and they say, oh, Trump was wrong. So sorry we deported all you guys. That would be horrible, right? So what you could imagine, and it would just be rational to have this, is that the standard at the injunction stage would be a pretty low bar. And you'd say, we don't want horrible, irreparable harm to happen while this legal challenge is going forward. So if there is an arguable case of any kind that what Trump did here is unconstitutional, illegal, wrong, in some way that the courts have something to say about, if that's the case, we want to enforce the status quo. We want to hold everything at the status quo and make sure that people's lives aren't harmed. The other place where this came into play recently, and I talked about it on the show before, was in the Teavana. So Starbucks wanted to close down all of these Teavana stores, and there was a court case challenging the closing down, saying there's all this harm that's going to be done. I believe that the people who were suing, I remember this, the people who were suing were the shopping mall owners. So Teavana wanted to close down their store and maybe even comply with the terms of the lease in terms of, paying whatever rent they might do when they close the store down and stuff like that. But I think that the argument from the shopping mall owners was that the traffic that they would lose in their shopping mall because the Teavana store was closed down was going to hurt them too. There's all this damage that they're alleging, and they're alleging that Starbucks didn't have a right to do this, that they couldn't close down. And a lot of people ran with this. It was an injunction ruling. It was a preliminary injunction. It wasn't a final ruling. It wasn't saying, no, Starbucks can't close their stores. It was, well, there's some kind of case here. Maybe Starbucks can't close their stores, but why don't we just make them keep the stores open while we figure this out? Because once you close the stores, these people are losing their jobs, and if they do close the store, of course the mall's going to try to get some other store in there, and all these changes will happen while the case is still being decided. Instead of having that be the case, why don't we make Starbucks, just do this? Now, you might think even that's wrong, but let's at least be clear about what's happening. So this is an injunction, first of all. This is a preliminary injunction. It doesn't mean that, at the final stage, they're not going to agree with Trump. Maybe once the legal challenge has its chance to go all the way through the different, levels of court appeals and everything else, maybe they're going to end up agreeing with Trump. Trump's going to get his way, and he's going to send all these peaceful, productive people back to wherever they came from, because I guess that's what freedom requires, right? I'm sorry, it makes me mad, but it does. Anyway, we'll talk about it. Um, but maybe they'll agree with him eventually. But right now, at this stage, it's logical for them to say, look, there's a case here, and let's not let too much harm be done while the courts are figuring out. So that's the idea. Um, yeah. So that's what happened. And as I said, Trump has this expectation that the courts are just going to agree with him that, Obama's executive order, it was unconstitutional. They shouldn't have been ever creating this program or anything else. And so what did he tweet about this morning? He says it just shows everyone how broken and unfair our court system is when the opposing side in a case such as DACA always runs to the Ninth Circuit and almost always wins before being reversed by the higher courts. So he's obviously quite frustrated at this. And, there you go. Because for me, when he's out here tweeting at 6:11 in the morning for him, 6:11 my time. Yeah, 6:11 my time is still quite early. Sometimes I see his tweet. I haven't even had coffee yet. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to respond to this guy? And I come up with something I think is pretty good. Again, before coffee, breaking the judicial branch of a constitutional government based on the principle of individual rights is not a rubber stamp for the executive branch's policies. It's like, dude, the court is actually a check on what you might think you like to do all the time. And my point is, and what I'm responding to in the tweet is, he says that the system is broken and unfair. And it's not that the system is broken and unfair. If he has a legitimate argument, and maybe he has a legitimate argument, I happen to hope not in the end, but there's, given our current system, given constitutional doctrine and what power over immigration the Constitution gives to the president and everything else, maybe substantively in terms of the law, he's got a case, right? He should win. Maybe. But it doesn't mean that our system is broken and unfair. What it means is that he disagrees substantively with the judges who are on the Ninth Circuit. And, it's not like just any old person can run to the Ninth Circuit. We have a lot of immigrants, probably a ton of people covered by DACA in the Ninth Circuit. It is an appropriate venue for a case that challenges DACA. You can't just run to a court. Usually there is, we learn in law school about this thing called forum shopping, where people will sort of stretch the limits as to what jurisdiction is appropriate for your case. You might go to state court versus federal court is the example that we've talked about in law school a lot. But here, you can't say that the Ninth Circuit is an inappropriate venue for a DACA case. I mean, we have a lot of immigrants here who are covered by the Dreamers, by the DACA program. So that's wrong. And as I said, what he is objecting to, really, or what he, should be objecting to, is not that our system is broken and unfair, but that the judicial philosophies of the judges on the Ninth Circuit are wrong. And as I said, maybe they are, but you can't get around that by having a temper tantrum because the court doesn't agree with you or something. Right after I wrote my response to him, Sandra Boynton, I saw her cartoon that she put out there. Sandra she's so much fun. And I have been a fan of hers ever since I first found greeting cards of hers in the store. And I've always been kind of big. I like to shop for greeting cards. And there's not always clever pre-printed greeting cards that have exactly the thing that you would like to say, to the recipient. But if there are, I love to grab them. And she used to have these cards. They're probably still in the store in some places. Things like, instead of happy birthday to you, it was hippo birdie to you, you meaning sheep, EWE. cute stuff. So I've been a fan for a really long time. I even bought, there was like a set of like a sheets, flannel sheets and comforter with her dinosaurs all over it. I mean, just cutest stuff. Had that for the longest time when I was in college and everything. So adorable. And she puts out these cartoons to commemorate whatever day it is. So there's always national something or another day that she can make a cartoon about. And today it happens to be Bittersweet Chocolate Day, I guess. I don't know these things. I only know them because of her, because I follow her on Instagram and now on Twitter too. So you've got to look at the cartoon. Just go look at it and imagine what a great laugh she gave me after answering Trump. Trump is frustrated because the court isn't not serving as a rubber stamp the way he expects it to happen. And there's Boynton saying, yeah, here's a judge serving as a stop to you, enjoying a piece of bittersweet chocolate. It's awesome stuff. Let me go over to the comments. Yeah, people are saying webcam. Oh no. You know, so hi Chandler. The way I look at this is I'm sort of like those people who are on Twitch and you are watching them play video games, because this is sort of my video game. This is my podcast. That's what you're watching me play the game that I play, which is doing this podcast. And I do have a lot of fun doing it. And if this is going to help get a bigger audience, I feel like I should be doing it. So now I'm looking at other comments, so give me a second here where I'm looking at these comments. And I guess I should be watching them more in real time because I'm not necessarily seeing connection to what I just said. It could be that I'm going to lose half of my stream just by talking about Trump, right? I'm sure that could go on as well. But let me just run over to a couple other stories that I wanted to give you. On immigration, he is being fairly aggressive. One story that I saw just this morning, I haven't had a chance to look at it, is that there is a new 7-Eleven probe, I guess, as to whether undocumented workers are there. It says immigration agents descended on dozens of 7-Eleven convenience stores before dawn on Wednesday to begin checking on employees' immigration status in what officials described as the largest operation against an employer under Donald Trump's presidency. They targeted about 100 stores nationwide, broadening an investigation that began 4 years ago with a case against a franchisee on New York's Long Island. The audits could lead to criminal charges or fines over the hiring practices. 21 people suspected of being in the U.S. illegally were arrested. Why? Because the government that's supposed to be protecting us from danger has nothing better to do than to arrest people who are trying to work and make a living. Similar story in the New York Times, January 8th, headline, Trump administration says that nearly 200,000 Salvadorans must leave. And this story I had read the other day, nearly 200,000 people from El Salvador who have been allowed to live here for how long? More than a decade. Now they must leave the country. Government officials just said, yep, I'm glad you've enjoyed living here for 10 years, establishing your career, raising your kids. Some of your kids have been born and their whole identity is tied up with being born in the United States and everything. You've bought property here, you have employed people here. Some of the examples that they give or at least one of the examples that they give in here is, somebody who started a company and hired people. But no, just kick them out. And you know why? Why? Because they can. Because according to this technicality in the law, they have something called temporary protected status. The Salvadorans have been allowed to live and work legally here under this program, giving them temporary protected status since 2001. They had these earthquakes, and then I guess they gave them this status. So um, over 200,000 people going to be kicked out, not because they are a risk to our rights in any way, shape, or form. It's simply because they can. Why? Because Trump believes he's going to be protecting you, the American people, from competition in the workplace. Andrew in the comments says due process is whatever the government says it is when it comes to immigration law. Jean says she's eating chocolate. When I, sort of get comfortable doing this, I might actually eat something while I'm doing the show. Those of you who have heard me on Blog Talk for all this time, you know that sometimes I have, what I usually do is I'll turn the microphone off and then I'll eat a little bit and then turn it back on again, so you have to hear me chewing and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm going to eat in front of you, but if I was, it was going to be chocolate. It was definitely going to be chocolate. Yeah, chocolate goes good with the show. For me, I eat the 90% lint that I put a little, picture of in my Patreon. Oh, I just gave away a spoiler. If you go to my Patreon page, the different levels of patron that you can be correspond to what I would call, roughly speaking, food groups. And one of them is, of course, chocolate. There's another food group that is buttered coffee. There's another one that is guacamole. Another one that is red wine. And then, of course, the one that goes without explanation is bacon. That was kind of fun. So much fun to do that. But the chocolate that I eat, this 90% lint, is mostly fat and carb. I mean, not, but it's not sugar. It's not mostly sugar. Do I prefer Patreon or PayPal contributions? I guess PayPal charges a little less. Patreon, if I had everybody who contributed to me under Patreon, it might be administratively slightly easier or something, but I don't care about that. Really, it's what I did is because some people say that they prefer Patreon, I went ahead and created that page, and it might be a way to increase the audience and increase the number of contributors. Jean saying, since 2001, what's temporary? Yeah, again, I don't want to go on to this too much, but let's connect this whole idea of scissors back to this, right? Because here are people who have elected Trump, and Trump is doing some things to improve the economy, arguably, where he's rolling back certain regulations, maybe cutting certain taxes is going to help the economy. Is it really in the long run or not? We can have that debate. But at least what's happening is people are getting a sense of conditions improving. And what they want, in addition to more jobs being created and their taxes lower and stuff, is they would like to be protected from competition from all these immigrants if they can. And so they would want, not just for all these new jobs to be available, but for it to be easy for them to get those jobs because they don't have to compete with immigrants. The injustice that is being done to peaceful, productive people because of the immigration policy. What's funny though, and I didn't put it in the program notes, but I should have grabbed it, and I was going to grab it yesterday, is I saw a headline yesterday that Trump is open to negotiations on immigration, that he realizes, and I guess he's prepared to disappoint some of the people who are expecting an immigration policy that's really going to, exclude a lot of productive foreigners. I shouldn't put productive in scare quotes because these are, productive people who want to come here and earn a living. His base is expecting a really strict immigration policy that's going to keep a whole lot of people out, including a lot of worthwhile people who would, greatly contribute to our life and economy here. That's their expectation, and he's prepared to disappoint them in order to make a deal. What is the thing that he wants? The thing that he wants is the wall. He wants to say, yeah, I'll make a deal on DACA, but the wall. And I'm sure that one of the reasons that he was so frustrated this morning is that he doesn't have DACA as, a real bargaining chip if you've seen, even at the preliminary injunction stage, right? Because it's just this preliminary injunction. Once, the Democrats see a hint of victory of, in the DACA, through the courts, then why should they negotiate with Trump about the wall? Why should they provide funding for the wall? So I'm sure that that's why Trump is, disappointed. I'm being asked here in the live stream, speaking of food, do you have a favorite wine? I do have a favorite red, and it's something I get to blame Euron about. It's a nice wine. It's called Prisoner. So, yeah, one time I was at a party and he had that wine and it was wonderful. So that is a favorite. And I actually don't know exact. I don't know if it's a red blend or something. Typically Pinot Noirs I drink a lot of, not a lot at a time, but that's habitually what I drink. Um, and what else? William agrees that guacamole is a food group basically, so that's good. Okay, so Trump's administration and his immigration policy, and Trump being frustrated because the court is not just falling into line and doing what he wants. I wanted to get into some of the comments that I've received in reaction to my tweet, because I think some of the comments that I receive show people doing this thing that I'm calling running with scissors, that they have certain expectations that aren't being met in the way that they think it should be. So, overall, the biggest thing that I'm seeing in the comments, the theme that I'm seeing in the comments, is that people think that the Ninth Circuit is wrong. Substantively, they are wrong. And doesn't this say something about the system being wrong? And I keep pushing back and I keep saying, no, the system is right. We have a system of checks and balances, which includes an independent judiciary. Yes, you can remove judges who are appointed for a lifetime tenure. This is the thing that Judge Kaczynski was maybe going to be facing because of the sexual harassment allegations and stuff that we talked about before. There is a process, but what I think you do not want is, I think you do not want the standard for judges being able to retain their lifetime tenure while they have good behavior, however it's put, right? You don't want that standard to be put up or shut up. That, Ninth Circuit, we're going to remove you, Ninth Circuit judge, we're going to remove you from your position because you've been overturned too many times by the Supreme Court. Now, everybody likes to make a joke about the Ninth Circuit, but would you really want to remove a judge, based on that standard? And I would argue, no, you don't want to remove a judge. You want the courts to serve as a legitimate check, as a meaningful check on the legislative and also executive branches of our system. People, they look at the fact that they are unhappy with the substantive rulings. Joe on Twitter this morning was talking about, well, the courts are approving of all of these horrible socialist policies, regulations and everything else. And so aren't the courts wrong or bad? And yeah, the courts are in a lot of ways wrong. But what is the answer to that? The answer to that is to look at the individual judges' underlying philosophy. What is their judicial philosophy? Are they judges who believe in the so-called living constitution, that they can make the constitution say whatever they think it means? Isn't that the problem? And I think it is. I think that is the problem. And that you cannot solve that by putting constraints in the system. You're not going to have as your criteria for appointing judges that they have to adhere to a certain judicial philosophy. There may be certain things that you could describe in an objective set of rules as to, what judges do, and we do that. They have to take an oath to support and uphold the Constitution. But what they're going to personally and professionally decide that that means is something that you can't have control over. They have free will. Judges have free will. And as I responded to one commenter, and I'd have to go through and dig a lot and make you watch me be quiet for a while and stuff to find out exactly who did it. So my apologies. But I was responding to one person before the show, and I was saying, what was I saying now? Lose my train of thought. You can't have this idea, that you expect judges to be automatons. Judges have free will, and I didn't say it exactly this way, but I am getting back to the point. I'm remembering the point. Judges have free will, and judges are susceptible, like all of us are, to absorbing the predominant philosophy that's out there in the culture. There's no system, no freedom supporting system anyway, right? There's no freedom supporting system of government that you could devise that could make it the case that judges are going to automatically hold the right judicial philosophy. There just isn't, right? And so the whole point for me in my response to Trump is that whereas he says the system is broken and unfair because he didn't get his way, the system is not broken and unfair. You might have an argument about the judicial philosophy of the particular judge is wrong. You might. And, let's have a debate about the substance of it. But it's not the system. And I do see it as an example of the scissors. Are you running with it or not is another thing to talk about. But people have this expectation. We have this great system. And we also have, in large part thanks to Ayn Rand, an idea, and thanks to our founding fathers, but Rand modified and sort of elaborated on that, the ideals that are embodied in the system that the founders gave us, right? We have this ideal of what government should properly do. And when what it actually does in the world doesn't live up to our expectations, we think, oh, well, there must be something wrong with the system. And I'm really hesitant to blame the system versus the individual people within the system. Go try and impeach a judge if you think they've actually done something wrong. But I don't think it would be good for anybody to have a standard for a judge. We'll retain you as long as you toe the line, as long as you aren't overturned too many times. That I just think that would be wrong, that people's expectations are wrong. There was another place where I said that somebody was running with scissors, and it's bugging me a little bit. So let me see if I can find that. And I think it was William. I don't know if William's going to remind me or not. Okay. Scrolling through my page. Follow Don't Let It Go Unheard on Facebook if you haven't. You might be here without liking the page. Don't be here without liking the page. Like the page. It's not an order. It's a hope. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So breaking judicial branch of government, etc. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so William says many people, especially legal and medical professionals, know perfectly well how dysfunctional the courts are. And I say, sure, that's due to philosophy. And it's due to philosophy. This is a lesson that I learned early on. I think it was from Arlene. I listened to a lecture of hers decades ago where she talked about the fact that the common law system, as great as even the common law is, it's not impervious to corruption from the bad philosophy that's out there that's held by people. No good system that is set up to allow human beings to live lives with each other in society where their rights are respected. No good system like that is going to be impervious to people's bad choices about philosophy, what philosophy they hold. William says, the philosophical position of thinking that those who serve as judges become any more knowledgeable and any less fallible or less biased by donning a black robe. Let's see. Who was I telling? Oh yeah, okay, so William is in this other thread. It's a different thread. I'm sorry, you guys. William says, if no system is free from bad philosophy, then that system is by definition inherently fundamentally flawed and should have no power. And then I say, no, I don't think that that is right, because human beings are the ones who are in this system. It is a system for human beings. They always have free will. And I tell him he's running with scissors. Is he really running with scissors? No, I don't think he is. I'll give you, sort of my thought of who's running with scissors in a minute. But you are dealing with this, I believe, unrealistic expectation that whatever is produced by this great system that we have is going to substantively match up with your expectations. And it can't. It cannot, because human beings within the system have free will, and the predominant philosophy that's in the culture is quite bad. And so many of the judges are going to be infected with that, and we're going to see those results. It just happens. And so, as I said, maybe Trump has a legitimate complaint, but the complaint is not with the system. It's with the underlying philosophy of the judges. The only thing that he could do about it would be to appoint better judges. But of all the people who are out there who are qualified to be judges today, his perhaps best alternative is a Scalia type originalist. That might be the best you can expect today. It's not perfect either. There's going to be times that those of us who actually know, what the proper function of government is, and on, all the different issues, substantively what they should be doing, we're going to be disappointed with a Scalia type judge at many points along the career. So that's my spiel on, Trump and Trump and immigration and everything else. Let me take a sip of water. I'm avoiding sipping water in front of you guys. It's so sad. Let me get back. As I said, program notes, you can find them at the blog at don'tletitgo.com, and there's some good stuff in there today. Don't miss the cute little Sandra Boynton cartoon and everything else. Okay, so before I go on to not Trump, basically, the thought that occurred to me overall is that we got Trump because of people running with scissors. And I'm sure Benjamin had this exact same thought, but I'm calling it running with scissors. So many people in our country were, I think, dismayed, and in part with good reason, because they have this expectation of being constantly safe from certain threats all the time, of, as I said, not having to compete with other people for jobs, whatever, sort of expectations that they had that were not being met, what they saw the state of their lives as, the state of our country as, versus what they think it should be. There's this disparity. And in part, the things that they're exposed to on the internet and everything else makes them more susceptible to feeling inadequate and everything else. And this is going to start tying into stuff that Mark Manson talks about in his book, that this connected world that we live in makes us even more susceptible to thinking that our lives are inadequate in some way, that it's not acceptable to have life sort of suck sometimes, that it's not always wonderful. Everything is not always great vacations and the best time ever and all of that. So, there's all these disgruntled Americans. They have in part some legitimate grievances, but they have this expectation that a politician can just make everything better. All you have to do is elect the right president and everything's just going to start falling in line automatically. And that's how we end up with Trump, Hillary, of course, was painted as horrible, and she is horrible in a lot of ways. And I also, as I said, was thinking Hillary was so corrupt that aren't we in some ways better off if we get a Donald Trump? It's a little bit of a wild card, but who knows? It could be at least a little bit better. So I think that people having this expectation that the world sort of snap into place with what they are led to believe it should be. That's what was behind the election of Trump. That's what's behind the popularity of some of these, nationalistic leaning political movements and political figures in other areas of the West as well. And it's alarming. It is really alarming. And what, Benjamin's blog post is asking you to think about is, where do you experience this frustration between the way things are in your life and in the world versus the way that you think things ought to be? And are you sort of running with that frustration without really examining it for a reality check? Are you acting on the basis of it, which is what I would be calling, the running with scissors, is where you are taking important actions in your life on the basis of feelings that you have of frustration, between these things. And if you're doing that, if you're running, so I'll give you an example. Actually, let me go to Manson first, and then I can give you the personal example. I'm not going to be able to go through the whole book today. And in fact, I've got about 30 minutes left in the show, and I don't know if I'm going to go the whole 30 minutes, because this is the third time that I started a 90-minute, well, second time I started a 90-minute segment. It's the third time I intended to start a 90-minute show. So Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, named the F book by Dave, who actually is over here. So Dave, this might be, if you want to chime in a little bit, we'll talk about this book more. This might be a time to chime in as to what the book has done for you. There is a chapter in the book. It's chapter 3 on the Audible version, and I think it's chapter 3 in the book version too, because he just says chapter 3. If he's one of those smart authors where the introduction is baked into chapter 1, maybe that's what he has done. But chapter 3 is called You're Not Special. And he has all of these stories, talking about this attitude of entitlement that people have. And if you're listening to the Audible version of the book, about 10 minutes to the end of chapter 3, this is an insight that Manson shares, I think, which ties right into this theme of running with scissors. He says, the easier and more problem-free our lives become, the more we seem to feel entitled for them to get even better. So that this, wonderful technology, including this communication technology that is available to us out there on the internet, has raised our expectations in an unrealistic way. And what is his message? His message is that you can't always expect it to be easy to have your problems solved, like this. We are in this amazing time, this amazing age. There's all this amazing technology out there, but you can't expect it to solve all of your problems instantaneously. Manson's not talking about scissors per se, but it's the same point. All this out there gives us a taste of something wonderful. And if we get a taste of something wonderful, we sometimes expect to have that, more of it all the time, to make it, that's going to be suddenly this predominant part of our lives. So I'll give you the personal example for me from the last several months or so of my life. I was minding my own business, and I was actually starting to do some studying toward a different career path. And this was in May or so. And out of the blue, I get this invitation to appear on Fox News with Tucker Carlson. And it was thanks to my friend Tammy Bruce, who I guest hosted for sometimes. And great opportunity. And I got to go on there and talk about atheism, really interesting ideas, having to do with, now I'm going to go blank on what I was talking about with atheism, closed-mindedness, right? Whether atheists are more closed-minded than religious people. And I went and I studied, and I, went to the studio, and, they didn't have the makeup artist. I had to put my own makeup on and worry about, I hadn't been on TV. I hadn't been on Fox for, 17 years I hadn't been on Fox. So, this is a big thing, and I'm on Tucker's show, and I go and I do this, and I did a good job. I did a nice job, and I thought, oh, this is great, and Tucker liked me, and producers in contact with me, and maybe they're gonna have me on again in the future. And I did get an invitation to be on another Fox show with Steve Hilton, and so then here I am thinking, well, I got this taste. I'm on Fox and I did well and they liked me, and then I got another invite. And so maybe I'm just going to have a whole career of this, just automatically just have it. And my Blog Talk audience will, suddenly become huge. And if I monetize and I put my commercials in there, which I forgot to do today, by the way, I'm going to have to figure out how to integrate all that. This is just too much for today. But monetize and everything else, then suddenly I'll make an income, and I could just do this and do what I love, talking to everybody and creating content. I could do this full time suddenly because I got this invitation, and I did, granted, I worked to make sure I was prepared, and I did my best on the show, and I did well on the show. And I think I did well on Steve Hilton's show too, but he didn't like me. But yeah, Tucker liked me. No, this is not how it works. There are a ton of people who appear on Fox regularly all the time. You don't get paid to go on Fox, by the way. They don't pay you. You can't expect that. You can't expect that suddenly you're going to have this big, huge audience and be able to be paid to do this for a living. Being able to be paid to do something like this for a living, what Dave Rubin does with his time, it's a huge privilege that he worked tremendously hard for. So you can't just have this expectation that that you're just it's gonna snap into place and everything's gonna be wonderful, all the stars are gonna align, so to speak. It doesn't happen. So that was me. I had this like, oh, it's just all gonna happen. And no, not so fast. You're gonna have to, if you want to do this, maybe over time, maybe I can build this. And as I said, I set up the Patreon page, and I want to say Patreon when I see the way it's spelled. It's Patreon, as pronounced by the founder of the company, Patreon. I set up the page, I'm doing the different things, and I have to be reasonable about it. I get this taste of awesome, and then I have to be reasonable about how much of that awesomeness I can realistically have in my life, given the constraints in the real world and real problems that I have to solve, right? So that's my example. That's my personal example. I assume that if you start thinking about this in your own life, that you can think of examples in your own life where you've been maybe running with scissors, and hopefully that metaphor will be helpful to you. If you see me out there in comment threads just telling you you're running with scissors, sometimes it might be a little bit of a facetious joke, but sometimes, just maybe think about it. And that's what I mean if I say running with scissors, that you're out there taking significant actions, drawing significant conclusions on the basis of the frustration you experience when you perceive the difference between the way things are and the way things you think ought to be, for various reasons. It could be just because you've had the taste of this cool thing. It's not necessarily an ideological should, but it's just, when we human beings, when we see something that can make everything safe, we expect everything to be safe, or, something that can make everything super entertaining all the time, we expect everything to be super entertaining all the time. We can be healthy by taking one pill or whatever, all the different ways we can have unrealistic expectations once we get a taste of innovation that does actually make our lives better in certain ways, or just other tastes of great and awesome things in the world. You can apply it in a number of different contexts. Like I said, I had that experience, and as you can think of things in your own life as well. So hopefully that is something that you found helpful. I've got about 22 minutes left on my current Blog Talk Radio stream. Maybe people on Facebook are getting sick of listening to me. Did I see Dave in the thread on Facebook talking about that? I do want to say I recommend that book. I do recommend that book. That chapter that I just cited, the chapter 3, which he calls "You Are Not Special," he discusses various ways that people feel entitled and why it is that they feel entitled. So it's different hows and whys, and he tells stories and things. And some of those stories you might think, because there's different ways that entitlement type thinking can creep into your consciousness. And some of it is because of this thing that, Benjamin calls the scissors, is expectations of how things should be versus how they are, and this feeling that you have of entitlement to have them be so much better. But there's a lot of different types of examples that he gives in there, and I would think that anybody could benefit from listening to at least that chapter alone, but the rest of the book offers a lot of good value too. Oh, people are liking my segues and stuff. I'm telling you, so the material that I had for today, in one sense, is just so intimidating because it is kind of a bit, it's a big topic and I'm integrating a lot of things. On the other hand, it's great because it's enough to keep me focused on it versus camera so much and everything else. It's just such a rich angle on a lot of the issues that I care about. And so it's both good and bad, right? Because it was, for me, I was like, what am I doing? The first time I'm doing live stream, I'm trying to do this big topic. But it is what it is. And so I said, okay, may as well. If you're going to go, you're going to go big. This is what I did. Let me get over to, and I'm saying more too because I'm more nervous. You notice that, right? When you're more nervous, you say a lot more. On a typical show when I'm only on Blog Talk, it's not too often that I say to fill space. I've noticed that. What else do I have? Oh, okay. So I brought in this Ayn Rand bot quotation because it integrated as I was going through stuff really kind of just before the show started. And this is how my brain works. I percolate this stuff and different things will integrate into the theme. Rand says that every form of causeless self-doubt, every feeling of inferiority and secret unworthiness is in fact man's hidden dread of his inability to deal with existence. And this is, I would say, the kind of deeper thing that's going on, I think, in some of the behaviors of entitlement and stuff that people have. The expectations that everything just be made great for them and stuff like that. Even if you go, and actually, I think the connection I was thinking of more with respect to Manson and this quotation was the part in which he was talking about there's a feeling of entitlement that people have even if they feel in some way inferior or that they have, sort of these huge insurmountable problems, that they're huge insurmountable problems that they've decided can't be solved or anything else, that it makes them, in a way, feel entitled to a status of victimhood and things like that too. And his chapter title is You're Not Special, that if you have had certain problems, that chances are that everybody else has had these problems and everything else. He doesn't go as deep as this quotation of Rand's, but I think that this idea of some sort of dread that you feel about your inability to handle your problems, that is going to make you feel inferior in various ways. And it could be manifested on a lot more superficial level, dissatisfaction with what you see in the world not meeting your expectations. But that entitlement, at root, it could have that cause. I'm not a psychologist, but to me, that resonated and it seemed to tie in the theme. Other attempts out there to scare you, make you feel upset. Talk about chocolate. I might as well bring this story in the last several minutes or so of the show. Experts say that chocolate could be impossible to produce by the year 2020. Yes, chocolate might be impossible to produce by the year 2020. So you all should now be very scared, especially Jean. Jean said that she's eating chocolate during my show. Actually, not 2020, excuse me, 2050. 2050. They're getting you alarmed about that. Maybe they don't think you'll believe that chocolate would be impossible to produce by 2020 because it's not that far away. But what is it that's going to make chocolate impossible to produce? It's going to be climate change. And so they're saying that, and I would go in the article and click on it and read parts of it to you, but I'm going to have to go off the top of my head. Why? Because when you go on that article, don't even click on that article. I put it in the program notes. You can go read it if you want, but the website is so full of ads, and the way that they pop up is so insidious. You don't want to go there. It was Fox LA, local LA. I follow them on Twitter and got this story. But so they're saying that climate change is going to make it impossible to grow chocolate in the areas that they're currently growing, because it'll change half a degree temperature, whatever. And so therefore, no chocolate. And so therefore, you should be worried. You should, elect the first politician who says that he's going to solve climate change like that by making a law about it, right? About a law banning fossil fuels or whatever. You got to elect that guy, because otherwise you're not going to have chocolate. I mean, we have Lindt 90% chocolate, which is just wonderful. And you expect that chocolate's going to just go on forever. It's going to be available to you every day for the rest of your life. You can enjoy this luscious chocolate, right? But they're saying, no way, impossible to produce by 2050. You should be scared, and you should go out. You should just run out to the polls now and just mindlessly pull the lever for the first politician that promises to eradicate catastrophic global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it this week. Just do that, because the chocolate will be gone. The chocolate is just going to be gone. And then if you refuse to, if you say, hey, I like fossil fuels, they kind of make my life easier, there's some cool things that I get to do with fossil fuels that make me happy, then they would say to you, why do you hate chocolate? That's what they would say to you. Yeah. Little bit of free market competition out there. It's funny, we've got a pro and a con story on Amazon. Pro, Walmart is taking I see this as a pro in a certain way. Let me explain why I see it as pro. Here's my brain, right? The headline is, Walmart is taking a direct shot at Amazon and making checkout lanes obsolete. And it's all about, there's these new apps that you can have in phones that you can serve as your own cashier. You can go through the store and shop for your item and use your phone to scan the item, the little barcode on the item. And then at the end, after you've scanned all the things that you want, you press pay and you pay. And then there's somebody who will look at your little, phone generated receipt and compare it to the stuff you have in your cart as you walk out the door, and then you just go. You never go to a cash register. This is awesome. Example of the scissors though, right? I posted this on Facebook, and somebody says, oh, well, you still have to wait in line for that person to compare your receipt to what's in the cart or whatever. Okay, so you want them to not worry about shoplifting, whatever. Maybe in the future there's going to be technology that all the cameras in the store are going to watch you all the time, and then they're going to instantaneously compare it with the receipt that's on your phone, and there doesn't need to be a person there, and you can just walk out. Maybe that'll happen, but it's not happening now. I mean, they're making your life easier, and then suddenly you expect it to be like effortless, that you could just walk out. No, sometimes they want to look and make sure you're not shoplifting. Anyway, so, the app, does the app allow you to change your mind and delete an item? Yeah, apparently it does. So there's that kind of stuff. Why is this pro Amazon? Okay, so in my mind, the reason this is pro Amazon is because Trump in particular, but that means probably other people in government too, they criticize Amazon as having too much market power, they're too rich. Every so often there's just these comments, about Amazon, it's just too successful, too rich. And here's an example of technology in the free market making it possible to compete with Amazon, to make it harder for Amazon to be the market dominating force that it is. So that's how I think it's pro Amazon. It's like, look, government, you don't need to intervene. There is technology, there is competition that is going to make other retailers able to compete with Amazon. Now, here's the anti Amazon, and I gotta hurry because actually my phone, oh, I can plug my phone in. I'm sorry. I'm plugging my phone in now because it needs power. Hopefully that doesn't mess up anything for you guys. Okay, we're good. I didn't want to be racing against the clock except for the blog talk clock. Sip of water. So the anti-Amazon story is this. Thanks to Johnny Lee for sending it along. Amazon turns over record amount of customer data to U.S. law enforcement. This is disappointing. Amazon's turned over a record amount of customer data to the U.S. government in the first half of last year in response to demands by law enforcement. The retail and cloud giant quietly posted its latest transparency report on December 29th without notice, as it has with previous reports detailing the latest figures for the first 6 months of 2017. It focuses solely on Amazon Web Services cloud business, and it revealed 1,936 different requests between January and June, which was a rise from the previous reports, 1,618 subpoenas, of which the company fully complied with 42%, 229 search warrants, they fully complied with 44%, 89 of other court orders, they fully complied with 52%. We don't know why there was a spike in requests, and they declined to comment at Amazon. They had confirmed that they had 75 requests from the outside and the blah, blah. Now, here's the thing, statistics, right? This is, for me, when I look at this, I say, okay, this is like you saying that, blacks are arrested more often or something. I need to know the substance of the other underlying case. So if in these different cases, like suppose the 42% that Amazon complied with of the subpoenas, suppose those 42% that they complied with were cases in which the government had provided them with the equivalent of probable cause and particularized suspicion like you would have for a warrant. We don't know based on this little write-up here. If they did, okay, fine. I have no problem with that. What I would want to know, yeah, maybe the government's going to request more stuff all the time because the government is just spoiled and they think they should be able to have any information at the tip of their fingers whenever they want it. So yeah, the government will ask for more. My question is, when did Amazon comply? When did they comply with the request? If they complied only when they were presented with what they would get with a proper warrant, then I think that's great. I don't have a problem. So the mere statistics don't mean anything. What, we don't know. We don't know that standard that they use. And what we do know is that the standard of proof for the subpoenas is lower than what it would be for the warrant. It's something significantly less than probable cause and particularized suspicion. Do I have in my mind an example of the scissors because I've put the theory out there that I expect to solve this whole problem and the courts haven't adopted it yet? No, I don't think I have that actually with that. I have in my mind this secret hope that one of the Supreme Court justices in Carpenter will have run across my article, the article that I published in the St. John Law Review. It's called Third Party Bathwater is the short version of the title. But in that article, I talked about how the court could make all of this data subject to the warrant requirement again. I'm not going to belabor that here. Anybody who wants to go read that article that I wrote a short opinion piece. It's over at the Objective Standard. It's Carpenter versus United States, the Supreme Court's opportunity to legalize privacy. Go ahead and read it. And in there I have a link to the St. John Law Review article. Yeah, there's a solution there. I've got a few pieces of music there at the end of the program notes. What I like to do sometimes is just introduce some new music to you, or just share a piece of music that maybe ties into the theme of the show. Sometimes what I'm doing is I'm sort of just recommending a new artist or things like that. In here, you've got a couple things. Fade Out Lines is that song that discusses the idea of fear, the danger of fear undermining all the kind of great connections that people make with each other and stuff. So you're out there in the world, you're interacting with your friends, both in real life and online and everything else. And kind of fear about the world not being as safe as for whatever reason you expect. There's two things I think going on with people being fearful. One is that they actually think it's more dangerous than it is, and we are often allowing ourselves to believe that based on what we see on the news and everything else. And one of the interesting points that Benjamin makes in his blog post is that the so-called alternative media, you might think that the purpose of the alternative media, or a good purpose for the alternative media, would be to make us feel better about the state of the world, because the mainstream media already does its share of making us feel real unsafe and crappy about the state of the world. Wouldn't it be nice if the alternative media did some job at remediating that? And it doesn't. A lot of times what the alternative media sources are doing is making us even more frightened. I stopped going to Drudge Report, for example, because of the sensationalism. Alex Jones is known for doing a whole bunch of sensational things that just make you scared. Am I still streaming live? I just got something happen to me on the Mevo. Hopefully it didn't get cut off. I'm going to be watching here. Who was it? There was a politician. I'm blanking on his name right now. But there was a politician who I was following, and his page on Facebook would constantly put out these kind of doom and gloom, fear-inducing stories. There's a whole lot of these outlets, and they get you to click on things. Benjamin makes that point. They get you to click on things by scaring you. People, they value their lives and all the other things that are dear to them, and they don't like to see those things threatened. And if they perceive threats to them, and if the internet presents you with things that are threatening you, maybe you'll click on it. That's an unfortunate thing. So that's one thing. Do you have this sense that the world is more dangerous, fraught with peril than it really is? And then even if you have a good sense of how safe things are, maybe you have this unrealistic demand that all the risks in the world be eradicated. And that's one of the things that is behind a lot of medical malpractice suits. I think that's one of the things that Benjamin mentions in the blog post. A lot of people expect doctors to just be omnipotent and omniscient and never ever make mistakes. Why? Because they have seen stories about miraculous cures. Women expect that all of their childbirths always go completely 100% smoothly with no kinks whatsoever. If there's ever any problem, then you blame it on the doctor. That sort of stuff. So it's out there. The kind of fear that you have, because sometimes there are terrorist attacks, right? This kind of fear will maybe cause you to run with scissors. So that's why I put fade out lines in there. The idea of fear destroying, if you act on fear, how it can destroy everything that we built up. And you could draw it, sort of more broadly, our wonderful constitutional system. It's flawed in certain ways, but let's go ahead and correct those ways that it's flawed. Don't, sort of criticize the system unfairly because of fear. Another that I put in there was Matt Bayless's new song, Marathon. there's a lot of good stuff in there just about this idea that if you're going to bring your reality, your world, in line with your expectations, it's not just going to be automatic. It's a marathon. So don't have this idea of, scissors where you get this taste of something wonderful and then everything's just going to fall into place. You have to be willing to go through the hard work and experience the disappointments, and that life is sometimes going to suck and you just keep going on. Great lyrics in there, Matt. Catchy tune. As I was posting out there as part of the pre-show dance party today was Matt's song. So I've got less than a minute on Blog Talk. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody now. Thank you for tuning in for my first live stream. I'm sorry for all the technical glitches at the beginning of it, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing this. I think, like I said, I still get a bit self-conscious about it if I have the moment to think about it, but thanks to the good content I had today, I was more absorbed in the content than anything else. So thanks, everybody. Take care. I don't know which I'm going to end first. I guess I'll end Blog Talk first and then live stream. So here I go. On Blog Talk, I click End Episode. And turn off my little Blog Talk microphone. And now I'm going to figure out how to say goodbye to you guys on the live stream here. What do I do? Oh, I think... Okay, I do that. And then I click this. Yeah, slide to stop. Bye, guys.